Welcome to Hit or Miss. Today we're taking a look at Final Fantasy XVI. Now this is a game that has had mixed reception from once it was announced to now being out and people have come in to finish the game. And likewise myself, I got a lot of different opinions on this, but I will start with the things that I did enjoy and then we'll go and talk about the things that I didn't like. I will also try and keep this review as spoiler free as possible, and if something is coming up where it might be kind of spoilery, I'll let you know. And for the gameplay on screen is going to be about pretty much 2 to 3 hours into the game, maybe 4 hours tops, but I'm not going to show too much later on in the game itself. I kind of want that to all stay secretive and spoiler free as much as possible. So the biggest things I enjoyed from this game was the combat, to an extent, the music, and the icon battles. I think those three things were like the biggest highlights for this game. The music is just beautiful. There's very few, I guess, nitpicks you could say I have throughout the game, in my opinion, with certain choices of songs being played for certain battles. I thought some of those were kind of odd, but they weren't really like stand out where I'm like, oh, I need to turn off the game. This is hurting my ears. It wasn't anything like that. It was just kind of like, this is kind of odd. Why is this music playing? I would expect this song to be playing instead, but overall it wasn't a deterrent from the actual experience itself. It was just something I noticed throughout playing that I kind of sat there for a minute and scratched my head, why is that playing? But it didn't really bother me overall. Now moving on to the icon battles, that's like the high of the high for me when it comes to this game. It is just spectacular. It is beautiful to watch, and I feel like it's only something that you can enjoy if you play it yourself. Like watching it, I feel like it's great, but once you play it, there's just a whole nother feeling to it, and it's just so amazing to just for the first time seeing how everything played out. And for me, since I came into this game and I didn't actually look at almost any trailers, and the only thing I played beforehand was a demo, which just lets you continue from there when you got the full game, it was perfect. I experienced everything for the first time, and I feel like that's how a lot of people really should be going into games, in my opinion, but that's just personally me. But again, the icon battles are just breathtaking. It is just so great, and there's no real words to describe it other than amazing. But I will say there's one complaint that people have pushed around, which is just the QTE, which is quick time events. I really felt like it kind of broke the immersion. It wasn't really needed per se, but the whole point of the QTEs was supposed to give you like more control over the icons, because the battles themselves, while you do have somewhat of control when you do it, it's not like super crazy like in-depth combat with it. But with your icon, you do at least get a decent amount of moves, but you don't really start off with many. You get more as time progresses. But that's my only real big complaint with that, I guess, if I had to nitpick about it. Overall, I wasn't too bothered by it. The icon battles were great for what they were. I wasn't really ever let down throughout the entire time playing it. I think the only thing this game suffered from when it came to the icon battles was just the length of some of them. I think some of them overstayed their welcome a little bit more than it should have. They could have trimmed the fat a little bit more, and it would have been a lot more cohesive, and it would have just been like a neatly tight package, instead of you've been playing it for so long, you're like, fuck, is this over yet? Because that's pretty much what happened to me after a while for one of the battles. I was just like, is this over yet? Like, this was fun at first, but I'm like, can we just like move on, please? Just give me a cutscene or something, and that's it. But a majority of the battles aren't like that. A lot of them are timed pretty well, and they don't really overstay their welcome. And I think that's really what helps to sell the experience of an icon battle, so that when you do get to doing them, you're just like awed and you're like, oh fuck, this is crazy, because you know it's gonna be over so fast. But yeah, the icon battles are chef's kiss. I fucking love them. It's easily the highlight for me, alongside the music. I wish that there was a little bit better changes with that for certain battles, but that's just a nitpick of mine. And then the third part is combat. Combat is good, but it has its issues. So generally the way the combat works is you get 3 different sets of icon abilities that you can swap around while you do your battles. So the way it would work is, let's say you start off with the way the game starts is you have icon Ifrit's icon powers. So you do like flame attacks and shit like that. And then later throughout the game, you get other icon abilities. And then what happens is, the way that you change it up is you sit there, you might use flame abilities for one attack, and then you switch it up to another icon's abilities, and then you switch it up and try and chain it into different moves, different combos, you know, shit like that. That is pretty much the way to spice up the combat, but that's really all there is to it. I think one of the biggest things that hurts the combat here is because of the way the combat is set up. When you have icon powers, you have 2 different powers that you can cycle around, and then if you master the abilities for those icon powers, then you can use them for the other icons that you turn on. So let's say that you have the fire icon, and then you master their abilities, and then you equip the wind icon as well too, because you like the way that their circle button ability works. Well, then you can equip the fire icon's abilities onto the wind icons if you have mastered it. which that part is great because now it gives you a little bit more variety on how you want to do your playstyle. But the thing that just sucks is there's only 2 abilities per icon slot, so it just kind of sucks in the sense that you have to keep switching between different icon abilities instead of having ability tied to triangle, one tied to square, then maybe one tied to X if you hold down R2. I think that was kind of a missed opportunity. It's kind of a downside because it just kind of limits your ability of freedom. Personally, that's just my opinion. I think it would have been nicer if we could have had more abilities, but I do get on the same token that if you were to want to focus on one icon the most, then you could max out all 4 different abilities that you get from their ability tree, and then you could just spread them out throughout the 3 icon slots that you get. The game features an ability tree, or ability circles if you will, that is in my opinion very lackluster. There's really no benefit to them. Some of that is just like shit that you unlock pretty much like an hour or 2 within the game, and then you don't even touch it anymore again. There's no real incentive to unlock any more abilities because there's not really much to unlock. The only thing that you really unlock is like an extra icon ability, but majority of your time spent throughout the game is just going to be upgrading your abilities for your icon powers. That's about it. You don't really upgrade any regular attack abilities no more. You don't get anything special or anything cool. None of that exists, and that's kind of disappointing. The only real positive I could say, I guess, from the skill tree is that you can reset your skills. So if you decide that, hey, I don't want to use this ability no more, you can reset it at no cost and then use the allocated ability points to another ability that you want to upgrade. If you want to change your moveset, you want to try something that might work better for your playstyle. But besides that, there isn't really anything else more in depth with that, which is kind of a shame because the combat is fun when the game starts. But as you kind of get into like mid-game, at least almost a quarter to mid-game, that the funness of that combat starts to kind of get repetitive and stale. Even when you do get more icon abilities, it can only do so much to make the combat feel more varied and make it not feel so samey all the time. But that's where a majority of my praises end. There are still a couple things that I think are great that I'll get into in a little bit, but let's start with the cons. And you know what, we'll just tie it into right now the gear system, the level system. From what I was talking about earlier, how combat kind of gets boring down the line and that there's really nothing that makes it spicy or to add flavor to it. This is part of the reason why. The gear system is dog shit. It's trash. There's nothing rewarding, there's nothing satisfying about it, and that goes hand in hand with the crafting system, which is almost non-existent, and the fact that there is a big varied open space into every single area you go into, but there is no real reward for actually exploring it or doing anything at all. So the way the gear system works is you have a sword, a belt, and a van brace. That's your 3 primary equipment that you always keep on that you want to keep leveling, and that's it, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but the problem with it is there's nothing special about it. Now, what do I mean? Throughout the game, you get such as rare swords, you get green swords, uncommon swords. You already know how it goes if you played RPG in the past. You have different rarities of equipment. The problem is, in this game, there is no benefit or anything that makes you want to keep the rare gear that you get throughout the game. So to give an example, earlier in the game, I got a purple sword, and not the sword was actually purple, but the rarity of it was ultra rare or rare. And you know, it had great stats on it, but later throughout the game, probably like an hour later, the shop that you can go and buy gear from has a better sword that has better stats on it. It's by like 5 points, but hey, 5 points is 5 points. Now you might be wondering, well, why would you go to that? Doesn't the rare sword have something, you know, special going on for it? No, it doesn't. There's no special attributes. There's nothing for it at all. It is literally just fancy text at the bottom to describe what the sword is, but there isn't any benefit to actually using that sword itself, other than I guess just out of personal liking of the design of the sword itself. But besides that, you don't get rewarded for sticking with a rare sword versus just a regular gray common sword, which to be honest is very disappointing. I really wish that there was more of an attribute system to the gear in this game, because what happens for the sword is the same that happens for the van brace and the belt. There's nothing special to it. You don't get any special attributes like more magic attack or more fire attack or anything that you could think of for attributes to help aid in combat for whatever your specific playstyle might be. It is so disappointing that it's just so underutilized to make the gear feel more worthwhile to go in and trying to get, you know, different gear and trying to find different move sets or play sets that fit you and how you want to play the game. The game doesn't do anything to give you a reason to try and do that, because all it is a numbers game. Oh shit, this got more higher numbers. All right, cool, that's fine. I guess I'll use that. For accessories, you get 3 slots, so that's the only real way you can spice things up. even then it's not really too crazy, because I mean, depending on how you want to play, you might just use like the same 3 shit throughout most of the game. That's kind of how I was. I had a thing that allowed potions to be more potent, so I got to heal a lot more, and then something for like one of my moves I can do more damage, and that's pretty much it. I just kept shit like that on throughout the whole game. There wasn't really any need or pressing matter for me to want to have to switch it up so that I can attune myself to the boss or the enemy that I'm fighting, so I can really, you know, kill them, because it wasn't really a challenge. There wasn't really anything that made me say, oh shit, this is hard as fuck. I gotta really rethink how I'm going to tackle this. But yeah, the gear system is just awful. It's really disappointing, and that goes in hand with the level design, just how this game plays out. So the way the game works for progressing the story is you have this big ass map that you go and you click on different pretty much highlight points, and you click on that and then you go into a section of the game, or the open world per se. It's not really open world, but quote unquote open world in the sense that you can explore around. You're not just like limited in where you can go in a sense. But that in its own is a problem, because there's nothing rewarding at all. You sit there, you click onto one area. So let's say I go to Sam Breck. I go to Sam Breck and I'm roaming through the place. There's this, I got in front of me a straight path. I go walk down the stone path, or I can sit there and look to the side of me, and hey, over there in the grassland greens, somewhere far away by some trees, I see this little sparkle, and I go and run over to it because I think it's going to probably be a drop worth picking up. Nope, it's 20 gil. Just 20 buckaroos, $20, and that's useless. That is a waste of my time. And guess what? That is pretty much the entirety of exploring in this game. Every single area you go to, you might find 1 or 2 treasure chests, and then you'll see a bunch of little glimmering lights that shine into the sky that tell you, hey, you might want to come run over here and pick this up. And you know, because it's like an inner, like natural instinct, you sit there and see, oh, you know, it's shiny, I want that. It's not worth it, man. Don't do it. It's not worth your time. More times than not, when you run over to it, it's going to be a gil bug, which just gives you some gil when you sell it, or just like actual gil itself, and maybe some crafting materials for a bunch of gear that you're probably never going to craft, because there's nothing special about 99.9% of the gear that you could even craft in the game. So because the gear system sucks, there's no real reason to craft gear. There's no reason to explore crafting materials to craft gear that's going to be pointless, because you can just buy better gear at the Charon shop instead of wasting your time. But on top of that, the game gives you so much crafting gear whenever you do main story missions that you never really feel pressed to go and grind out crafting materials either. So there's really no reason to explore, and if you do explore, you're just going to feel like your time is wasted, because there's nothing to explore. It's just barren, empty wastelands and trash mobs that don't really give you anything other than experience points, which you don't even really need, because you'll get enough while you just play the main story itself. So it's just really disappointing that they had this idea of having a somewhat semi-open world, or a semi-open linear world, where you can go and explore the world that they created, but the thing is, there's nothing really to explore. There's nothing rewarding. Your time isn't rewarded for going out off the path and trying to see what things that they have put into the world, because there isn't really anything there other than trash mobs or enemies that you can hunt that are on the bounty board. That's literally it. So that's an area I wish they would have spent more time on. Another big complaint that I have that I've been seeing voiced a lot online is just the side missions. They're awful. They're terrible. There's a couple good ones sprinkled inside, but majority of them are trash. You don't even want to waste your time. You don't get money from them. If you do, you get a little bit of money that's not worth your time, because you already get a lot from doing the main story itself. On top of that, you don't really get much experience points. You don't really get anything. A lot of the side quests consist of saying, hey, go fetch me this, go fetch me that, go kill this mob, go kill that mob. It's nothing really that contributes to the overall story, or something that makes you really appreciate it and want to keep doing more or following up. It's not to say that some side missions like that don't exist, because they do. There are very few of them. They do exist, but a majority of it is literally just fetch this, go grab me this, go do this, kill this, and it's just very boring. It's very lackluster. To all the people that say it gets better as time progresses, you fucking liar. No, it doesn't. Sure, there's 1 or 2 decent missions that did come up throughout the story as you kept progressing, but a majority of them were just trash. A lot of people were turned off by it. They just quit bothering with it after a while. I did. Once I got about halfway through the game, I said, fuck this. I ain't wasting my time no more. There's no point. Unless I knew it was a side quest that was going to give me something beneficial to the game, which there are some side quests that do that. I won't name them just out of spoiler reasons. I don't want to spoil it for you. Well, there are some certain side missions that will give you things that is beneficial to your overall adventure throughout the game. But for the most part, a majority of them are not worth your time. And I really wish that was something they would have spent more time on as well too. The best way that a lot of people have described it is MMO busy work. That's pretty much the best way to describe these side missions. It's just pretty much things to fill out the story, try and make things pace it out better, but it did anything but that. because the pacing of the story is not that great. It had issues, which leads me to the story. I think that the story for the most part is pretty good, but it has its flaws. I feel like that's pretty much the entirety of this review in a nutshell. This is a good game with a lot of flaws, but they're not flaws that make me not enjoy the game overall. For this game and the story, overall, I think it's pretty well done. I think the characters are written pretty well, but there are a couple of characters that I think they could have written a lot better. They had no depth to them, and the time that they did give them to shine, it was pretty lackluster. Some characters really felt like they were just side characters, despite being a part of the story 99% of the time. They felt like they were just NPCs that just happened to show up in the background with you. They lacked depth and substance, which really was a disappointment. It's not to say that the character was like a flat board. It was like a white wall, just bland personality altogether. And there's one character in specific that I won't really name anything, but if you play the game, then you'll know what I'm talking about. But they gave her one chapter in this game that was supposed to be like her redeeming arc and sort of build up a lot more backstory for her, and that was it. They just did that one chapter for her, and then they kind of forgot about her again, and she just kind of was a sideline that didn't really contribute much to the overall story or even made you really that invested into her. Like, she was cool, she was great, but the writers didn't do a really good job at making her stand out amongst the rest of the other main characters in the game, and that was just really kind of disappointing because she's a great character that I felt like has so much potential, but they just didn't get there. And same for another character. Again, I'm not going to go into spoilers, but I will say it's a character that shows up about mid to late game that's supposed to be a big challenge to Clive and him as a character, and it's supposed to really put you on your toes and really test everything you learned in this game up to this point. But it was just disappointing. The character wasn't written well at all. It was very bland, very lackluster. A lot of the hype that was built up for him was kind of just not there. It was just extremely disappointing. Again, I'm not going to go into spoilers, but for those who've already played the game, then you'll know what I'm talking about. That character is just awful. It was just disappointing. There was so much potential, so much, especially considering everything that follows after mid game and how much they did so good with it, that the game kind of fell on its ass. After midway through the game just kind of shit itself. Another big complaint that I've seen from a lot of people, especially people that have played the demo like me, and that was kind of like our experiences to the game and what made us get the game, is the demo is kind of a different experience to the main game itself, because the demo itself is a very closed experience, and that kind of gives you an idea of what to expect, and you kind of hope that that's what you're going to keep getting throughout the rest of the game, when in reality it's not. Once the game opens up more, once you actually get into the main game itself, because the demo itself is kind of more closed in, once you get into the main game, things kind of open up, and that kind of becomes a detriment to it because of the things I said earlier, such as the semi-open world is not really open, but you can explore, but there's no reason to, the lackluster gear system, the boring side quests, and then the way the game wants to pace out, because you can't just have like hype moment after hype moment after hype moment. The way they end up trying to pace things out and to kind of give you a moment to cool down, those missions don't really end up being beneficial or useful at all. It's just things that you could have skipped. I understand that you need to have a cooldown period, and to me that's what side missions are for, but unfortunately the side missions suck, so it kind of hurts that in its own right, because now you don't really have anything to go to cool down, because that's what they do in this game, to kind of cool off after a big moment. What they do is your next mission is literally just like a go over here, talk to this person, go back, go talk to this person, go talk to this person, go fetch this, go kill this, go fetch. It's just really boring missions that you kind of question, why does it exist? What's the purpose of it? It feels like busy work that should be a side quest and not be in the main story. Again, I understand that after hype moments you need to be able to have a cooldown period, but they did do it right. To me, that ruined the pacing a lot with this game, and I think to me that was my issue. Was this game is great all the way up until the midway point. Once you get midway through the game, it becomes a slog, it becomes a chore, it feels like things just drag on. I kind of just want it to be over with, because everything just feels like it's starting to crumble, it starts to fall apart. It doesn't feel cohesive anymore. It feels like things are just kind of slipping everywhere, and there's no real direct vision, and nothing really feels like it's satisfying or pays out, and everything just keeps getting better and better and better like it was at the beginning of the game. Now I want to be clear, I did still enjoy the story after the 50% mark. I'm not saying that, oh, it just went to shit and I was just like, I hate it, turning on my PS5 to play the game. No, it wasn't that. It's just that I wish it was more. I wish it was keeping up with that same energy that the beginning of the game had. I still enjoy the story in the game from the 50% mark all the way to completion, but I just know that it could have been better. And that's so I'm just disappointed in that, someone that was really happy with how everything was progressing and just not seeing it keep up that momentum as time progressed. From the beginning of the game to 50%, it always felt like it kept outdoing itself. Things just kept getting better and better and better and better, and it was just wild. It was just like you're on a high, and that high was never going away. But once you get after that halfway point, it just all comes crashing down, and you just start to feel kind of let down because it's not delivering that same excitement that you had at the beginning of the game, and you start feeling like it's kind of lingering on because the side quest isn't really good, and the way that they're trying to pace out the story, they have it set up where you're just doing all these fetch quests, and just it's kind of just like random stops in the story when things are just moving and the momentum is there, and then they just stop and they say, hey, go talk to this person, and go spend 30 minutes going back and forth talking to different people, and you're just like, well, this is such a waste of time. I just want to keep going with the main story. You know, it's things like that, and I feel like that really hurts the game overall, but it wasn't a detriment enough to me disliking the entire story or me even playing the game. Overall, this game is a hit. I enjoyed my time playing it, and I wouldn't mind playing it again whenever it comes out to PC, but I think this is a game that really needs the Kingdom Hearts Final Mix type treatment, where they go back and they create like a definitive edition where they take a lot of people's complaints and concerns and they try and improve upon that. I think this game could really benefit from it a lot, because there are a lot of things that if they were to tweak this and do a couple other things different, I feel like it could make this game shine and really be something that is like a game of the year. But that's just my personal opinion. At the end of the day, this isn't going to be a game for everyone. For me, I enjoyed it. I still loved everything about it. Is it the greatest game I've ever played? No. Is it the game of the year for me this year? Maybe. Depends what else comes out this year that I like. If I had to give this game a rating, I normally don't give ratings to games, but I really feel like this is a solid 7.5 out of 10. It's not terrible. It's not amazing, but it's a good game. And I feel like if they were to address some of the complaints that a majority of players had, it could easily boost this game up to at least like an 8, 8.5, almost a 9. That's personally how I feel about it. Again, these are just my opinions. Everyone's experience is going to be different from this game, and this is just mine. Anyways, that's all I got for you. If you made this far into the video, consider giving it a like, subscribing to the channel. Leave me a comment below what you think. Have a great day. Yeah.